It appears that the Dark Knight has an even darker doppelganger. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Forever Evil Gold Label Collection Owlman. As a boy, Thomas Wayne Jr. plotted with the family butler Alfred to kill his parents Thomas and Martha Wayne, whom he feared were squandering his inheritance. His younger brother Bruce was also killed by Alfred and Thomas to stamp out any weakness in the older boy. As an adult, Thomas would become the brutal Owlman, ruling Gotham City by any means necessary. After the destruction of his world, Owlman traveled to Earth Zero with the crime syndicate. He disappeared following the defeat of the crime syndicate. And just before we look at Bruce's older brother, I'd like to first thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that were kind enough to provide the sample of Owlman that we could have a look in this review. I'll also bring in Batman in a moment for some size comparisons, but first things first, the figure of Owlman stands 7¼ inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 18 centimeters tall. Speaking of Bruce, let's bring in now the Nightfall Batman, also from DC Multiverse. If you were to say use this Batman as a comparison, then Owlman's going to be a little bit taller. If you're going to be using, like, for example, the Hush Batman, then Hush Batman will obviously be a little bit bigger and broader. Another figure, at least from Batman from Another World, here's what Owlman also looks like from Batman, or compared against Batman from Zur-En-Arrh. Unfortunately, what you're seeing right now is the only things that come packed along with the Crime Syndicate version of the Cape Crusader, as Owlman doesn't come with anything to really hold, but he comes instead with a display stand and trading card. First, the display stand, of course, is nothing really different than the ones we normally always look here in this channel, a big circular black display stand with a little peg on the top corner that can plug into either one of Owlman's feet. And then you've got the DC logo printed down below, once again stamped out in black. The figure also as well comes included with a trading card. The trading card, I do really like the image that they used here for Owlman. But again, like, he doesn't come with any accessories. He's solely just relegated, really, just the trading card and display stand. But we flip around to the back. His real name is Thomas Wayne Jr. So he would have been the alternate reality eldest brother of Bruce Wayne. In other worlds, he would have died early on, and long before Bruce would have even known him. But in this alternate reality, Thomas Wayne Jr. would have grown older, wiser, and more disgruntled by his parents, wanting to kill them off. A very good substantial read-up as well. You can pause and read for yourself if you so wish. I happen to as well read that at the beginning of the video. I saved yourself a little bit of the trouble. We're going to move that all off to the side. Like I said, unfortunately, the figure doesn't come included with anything that you could possibly put in his hands. Although, really, the hands are already designed in such a way that he's not really going to be holding anything anyways. If I was to, say, pick up the figure and prove that, you can see, like, with his hands, they're all basically just either gestured hands or clawing hands. Nothing really hold a batarang or a grapple gun of his counterpart. Unfortunately, though, while I really wish he could have really come included with anything that he could have actually held in his hands. That being aside, though, it's actually a nice-looking figure of Owlman. Spin this around so you guys can see it from all the sides. Certainly taking the idea of Owlman, we've had a couple of iterations of Owlman in the comics. This one just happens to be, again, the one from Fear, what was it, Fear Forever? Not a comic run, unfortunately, I ever really read myself, but I will say, though, like, the actual look of the figure is really good. He's got the very large eyes that usually go hand in hand with Owlman, painted this time around, though, in blue, and outlined very nicely, though, in a black. His mouth is that a very neutral expression, so he doesn't actually have any sort of expression on his face that really does stand out than the regular just defaulted faces that they usually go with these figures. He's got some really nice painting there on the top. Check out the nice paint of black that they've used here for the top of his crest. He also has that on the side as well. This is a figure, I will say, though, does look good from all the sides. Not only does it look really good from the front, but when you look at it from the side, it has a really interesting looking profile to it. Some iterations of Owlman have also had, like, the front face parts kind of sticking a little bit further. This one actually kind of wraps it a little bit more closer to his face. Again, spinning around from the back, you can kind of see the little feathers that he has on the back of his helmet, for example. And that continued trend kind of goes down as well to the cape that he has. The cape is very much a softer plastic that they would have used, but I kind of like the kind of pearlesque blue that they've used for the actual coloring. It really does look nice. And because, of course, it is a softer material, it has a little bit more give to it than if it was more rigid material. I kind of like and prefer more the softer plastic that they actually use for these figures. Harder plastic never really sits properly on the figure, and always just kind of feels like you can't really do too much with them. I mean, obviously, some people just prefer the cloth capes. I kind of, depending on really what the line is. If it's like superpowers, for example, I would much rather prefer fabric capes. But when it comes to, like, DC Multiverse figures, I think I actually like the softer plastic capes myself. The actual thing about the figure, too, is the thing I really like about him is the coloring that they chose for him. This really nice looking blue. It's not quite the same kind of blue as what we're getting here with Batman. It's very close. You can see, like with Batman's trunks, for example, and his gloves, they are notably a little bit darker than the actual blue that they use for Owlman here. Like Batman, though, he does have his little Owlman symbol there printed on the front of his chest. It's nice to see that they actually molded that in place and not just simply printed it over top of the existing plastic. It seems, from what I can see at least, that this is a brand new re-sculpted body. Like, it doesn't look like they probably used any of the elements over from other figures. Brand new knee pads, for example. Like, again, like looking at the boots and looking at the legs and looking at the arms and all the things in between, it doesn't really look like there's anything that's been used with this figure that wasn't already used from another figure. Now, I think we did get, in fact, another Owlman that was part of the Crime Syndicate wave. I think, if memory serves me correctly, it had the Build-A-Figure pieces to build Starro. I never was able to kind of track those figures down because I think at one point they were Walmart exclusives and they were super hard to come by and crazy stupid money now to get right now. One thing I also really like about the figure, while not having really any bit of paint, the figure has some really nice sculpting here for his utility belt. But really, like looking at the figure, they're all kind of really relying on just the bare basics of the plastic alone. It doesn't really look like there's any additional washes anywhere to the plastic. He certainly doesn't have any wash at all added to the utility belt. It's kind of, again, just relying on just the plastic alone. Unless they probably would have gone in there and just painted a utility belt. But if you kind of look at it from the sides, it looks like it's actually a separate piece that they would have put over top the existing body. Where there is maybe lacking paint, for example, it more than makes up for it, I feel, in the sculpting. Things like his legs, for example, you got this nice little texturing, sort of has like a kind of woven sculptor to you. You can kind of see by the way they've sculpted the thighs. The thighs, though, aren't quite the same sort of, I don't want to say like the same color of plastic, but if you like look at it, for example, these legs don't seem as the same vibrancy as perhaps his chest. It almost seems like the legs are just a little bit lighter. That may have also something to do with the fact like his lower trunks are always going to be using a more softer plastic. And it does also seem in a way that he's got a little bit also here for his torso. I'm just going to flip his cape up so you guys can see here. See, there's a little bit of more softer plastic that they actually use for the top of his torso. It's not as much here. This is actually all hard plastic. For one reason or another, they decided to use a softer plastic around his abdomen area. Now, the figure's articulation is going to be still the same as pretty much all your DC Multiverse figures now. Owlman, for example, will have the head rotation on that ball joint, so you can rotate it all the way around. The head looks up only that far, just by how much that he actually has on the back and bottom of his helmet. It's going to really prevent the figure from having a really higher up look. That's one thing that his younger brother actually does a better job with doing, is actually being able to look a little higher than this. The head does, though, look down quite far. You can also move it back and forth as well. Now, when it comes to his shoulders not mentioned already, is they're using a softer plastic here, similar to what they would have done with the cape. By using a softer plastic, it means that you can rotate the arms all the way around. If this was a harder plastic, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now. Again, it's a little on the tighter side, but still, there's enough give to it that you can easily bring the arms not only around, but you can also take them and bring them out at 90 degrees. The figure does have a bicep swivel. The figure as well does have a double hinge on the elbow, and both the hands, if you could believe it, do have a rotation that go all the way around, and you can also hinge them back and forth. As we move a little bit further down on the figure's torso, he has an upper torso ball joint, and then he also has a secondary ball joint just behind the utility belt. And you can also move him in two places there. The figure does have ratcheted joints once again at the tops of his thighs. You can see like the inner workings of the figure behind the scenes. You take the legs and you move them forward, you can move them back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh. Double hinge on the knee. No articulation at all for the boots. They're basically sculpted as continued pieces for the calf. But there's at least ankle pivots, so you can move them up and down this way. Rock the ankles this way. And the figure does also have toe articulation as well. It's a good-looking figure. It doesn't really have much in the way of paint, because, again, I think they're relying only solely on just the plastic of the blue. But I got to say, like, the blue does look really good here on Owlman. Let's get the figure to stand here. If, when in doubt, you're having any problems, by the way, getting the figure to stand. Right now he's giving me problems because, of course, I'm hitting the record button. Let's just get Owlman to stand right there. And then, again, we'll bring back in his younger brother, Bruce. There's what he looks like with the, well, this would have been the Nightfall Batman. I'm just drawing a bit blank. There's the Nightfall Batman, along displayed with Owlman. Yeah, I like the look of Owlman quite a lot. Not a lot of paint. Sadly lacking in all the accessories, which again, like, I really think with this being a gold label edition version of Owlman, they really could have taken the time not only just to include the display stand, not only just to include a trading card, but also some of the bells and whistles that Owlman would have as well. As we now jump over to the final looks of Forever Evil Owlman. I was drawing a bit of a blank, actually, the name of the comic run in which this character was pulled from, but it's Forever Evil. And what an evil-looking Batman this one certainly turned out to be. Unfortunately, though, once again, no accessories. Why would they have not just given accessories for an Owlman? Batman sometimes gets relegated with little to no accessories either. But for Owlman being part of the gold label edition, I thought they would have gone out of their way to kind of include other things above and beyond, just like the display stand and the trading card. If you remove the idea that the figure had to have accessories. If you're looking at him just from face value of what he actually is, a nice looking figure. Not much in the way of paint. It looks like they really relied on just the plastic colors alone. They did a nice job at least at painting the tops of his shoulders and that headpiece. That's a really nice looking Owlman. Definitely one that's worth picking up if you ever get the chance to find this one. A big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did come through and provide the sample of the brand new DC Multiverse Forever Evil Owlman. I remembered it this time. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. Is this one you guys could certainly see yourselves picking up? And of the Crime Syndicate, let me throw this questioning out to you, the viewing audience. Who's your favorite member? Is it Owlman? Let me know down below. Also as well, hey, if you guys popping up at the very end of this video, you want a little bit more time to check out the other things I've looked at from McFarlane Toys, that's okay. At the very end of this video, we'll be popping up a playlist. Feel free to give that a gander. It's all the other things I've looked at from not only McFarlane Toys, but also DC Multiverse. We are going to be looking at, speaking of which, some more DC Multiverse reviews. Those will be coming in the pipeline. So, of course, keeping sure you're always keeping your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.